Greetings, I'm the one called Harshaw, and welcome to VG Therapy, the channel where I talk about games. Now, I figured I might as well just round out the year with another Dreamcast game. A game that I got because I got a Dreamcast and I needed more than one game. A game called Blue Stinger. Because I looked at it, thought this looked like an okay survival horror, and that's about it. I haven't actually played it until now, so let's see what it's like.
Blue Stinger is a survival horror game that was a launch title for the Dreamcast, and from what I can find, it seems that it was being made alongside Illbleed, which is of sorts a sister game to Blue Stinger. Shinya Nishigaki, who was the man in charge for both games, was asked to make a sequel to Blue Stinger, but turned it down to continue working on Illbleed.
Which, to my understanding, is something that people do appreciate.
However, he wasn't alone in making this game. He also had Toshihiko Sahashi doing the music, who also worked on things like The Big O, Gundam Seed, Fullmetal Panic, and a ton of other shows. There was also mangaka Masaki Sagawa, who was largely known for Basilisk, acting as a co-writer of Nishigaki, and finally there was also Robert Shaw, who was a makeup artist and creature designer known for his work in Beetlejuice, and also being a story consultant for Illbleed.
So they have a better lineup than I initially thought. But do they nail it? Well, to figure that out, we'll have to look at the story. Because in a horror game, the best or most disposable part is the story.
In the year 2000, an earthquake causes some land in the Yucatan Peninsula to sink, leaving only a small island in the center. The lost island is the same size and is thought to be in the same place as the meteor that wiped out the dinosaurs. So remembering this connection, they call the island Dinosaur Island.
Imaginative.
Now 18 years later, Elliot Ballard, an elite member of the Emergency Sea Evacuation Rescue Forces, is vacationing off the coast of Dino Land when something crashes into the island, and encases the island and half of Elliot's boat in a blue dome. And so now it's up to you to figure out what is going on. And along the way you are accompanied by Dogs Bauer, a sea captain, and Janie King, a security officer who works on the island, who from second one Elliot starts to flirt with, and Dogs hates it. And her a little bit.
That snotty little brat. No better mother is exactly like her.
Now let's just hold on for a minute, because there's something I want to clarify. Now I'm someone who makes videos on YouTube about video games, so that means that I don't really have the best social skills. But I'm under the impression that if you meet someone, and you're in a life or death situation, the appropriate response is not to start calling them honey and sweetheart in the first couple of seconds. There's being forward and then there's this.
Now going further, and you meet Nephilim, a spirit, I guess, who hangs out with you as you fight the various mutants now inhabiting the island. Now as things go on, the story gets more silly, so I'm not going to go into too much detail.
But one thing I will go into detail about is how weirdly animated and cheesy this entire game is.
I mean, look at the acting in this scene.
Good, I'll go. Hey dogs.
What?
Stay with Janine. I kinda have a bad feeling. When it comes to bad luck, my hunches tend to be right on.
Never mind. I don't need a guardian.
She made a choice.
Call me on the line if something happens.
I absolutely love it. Also, that voice sounds kind of familiar. Let me just look up the voice actors real quick. Sonic plays Elliot, Eggman plays Dogs, and Rouge plays Janie, with Big the Cat providing additional voices. Huh.
Now just for a tiny bit of spoilers, but here we have a story where Sonic is in love with Rouge, who is Eggman's daughter, and Big the Cat's off in the background somewhere. I feel like this exists somewhere, and that's really all I need to know about that.
So moving as fast as possible away from that, let's get into gameplay. As I said, this is a survival horror. However, it doesn't have the traditional tank controls or fixed camera angles.
Unless you're playing a Japanese copy, because that does have fixed camera angles.
Although here, the following camera for the most part is fine, but there are numerous instances where I would have my back to something and the camera would not behave well, and so I couldn't see where the monsters were, which wasn't great. And also, there is no reset the camera button. There's a left trigger which puts you into a free look mode, but hitting it when the camera's far away only makes it start heading over to your back in such a way that makes you wonder why the camera thinks it's got all the time in the world to let you see what's chasing you. Now this is why I can see the Western audiences having complaints about the camera and the Japanese audience not, as the camera change was a demand by Activision, who had the distribution license in the West.
Oh, Activision. It warms my heart to know that you are always a pest.
But even if you weren't told that, you would know because the variety of guns you get auto-lock on when you're aiming in the general direction of enemies, and the game feels like it's made for fixed camera angles, as there are many instances where entering a room is not great, and so you just flail about randomly hoping to clear some room for yourself.
I should probably move past the camera because I'm starting to get into mechanics I haven't detailed yet.
While in most survival horror games you're trying to avoid combat, here it isn't really bad enough to warrant avoiding. Now when I say bad, I also mean tough, as the lack of precision and limited resources means that it's generally a good idea to avoid combat. But here there is a lack of precision, but not as severe, and the limited resources aren't so limited. Similar to Silent Hill, there are a large selection of melee weapons, weapons, which are rather strong and aren't so unwieldy as to deter you from using them freely. So it is rather easy to save ammo when, for the most part, you don't even need to save it because your melee weapons are more than good enough. But add on top of this the fact that when an enemy dies, they drop money, which can be used at the various shops which have as much ammo and healing items as you have cash. So you're not using much ammo because why would you? And also you're getting a lot of money, which is used to buy ammo and health, so you're never in a tough spot.
And you might be wondering if the melee weapons are actually that good, or if they're just good enough to justify saving ammo.
And in all honesty, some of the melee weapons are better than some of their guns. Like, the melee weapons knock down and stun more often, and the pistol is an okay pistol and the shotgun is very inaccurate, so you need to get in melee range anyway. And since you have a melee button and a gun button, that means that I have no need to use my guns, except for the handful of bosses, which I feel kind of takes away from the survival aspects. I shouldn't be in the lead up to the final boss, and be receiving messages about how I can't carry any more ammo. And it's not like I was playing on easy, I was playing on normal. Unless hard does something drastic, I'd imagine it'd be more of the same. Because enemies would go down in like 3 or 4 shotgun shots, of which something like 10 fit in a magazine, and I was going to the final battle with 9 magazines. For all of my weapons. Most mini-bosses go down to 10-ish rockets, and I had 50 for the final boss because I wasn't allowed to carry more.
This game's really easy if I wasn't clear.
The only difficulty came from exploring the levels themselves, as the only times I died was when I got cornered and so I couldn't hit them properly. And also healing requires you to start and finish an animation that can get interrupted and make you lose your item. So I would get stunned to death and try to keep in mind not to do what I just did.
And while I led in by saying that exploration is difficult, it in of itself really isn't. Like, there are some puzzles that I have no idea how I was supposed to know the answer to, but at the same time I know I probably just wasn't paying attention.
Although I'm still a bit unsure of this one though. You help out a little girl who calls you hot, then says she'll give you a present because it's Christmas Eve, then stops talking. And nearby there's a locked door that needs a password. And since I was used to weird dialogue at this point, I didn't realize that her comment wasn't that since it's Christmas Eve I'll give you a present, but rather her present is her saying that it's Christmas Eve, because the password is 1224.
Like, sure, I guess, but really?
I should probably take this opportunity to mention that you can also play as Dog's Bower. I didn't play as him much because he moves a bit slower and he can only use one weapon, which is the trade-off for being able to block, which only reduces the damage so you still get hurt, which I felt was kind of pointless. Also, his guns aren't very good. And also, despite playing a sea captain, he can't swim that well, so when you need to swim, you have to play as Elliot, which is another reason as to why I just stayed as Elliot. Implying that I needed a reason other than having better weapons, moves faster, and there are times where you have to play as Elliot but never as dogs.
Now, while there are a number of faults with this game, I still had a good time, but probably not for the reason that they wanted me to. This game's good for a lark, but not much else. And like, it's not a travesty or anything like that, it's just kind of subpar. And if you're not into this dumb, cheesy goodness, then there's really nothing for you. And so as a result, I'd give this game a 2 out of 4 because it's technically not a very good game, but it's good for a laugh. And so there is some enjoyment to get out of this game. And then with that, I've been Horror Show, and this is VG Therapy.